It is Ryan here, and I have a question for you. What do you do when you win? Like, are you a fist pumper, a woohooer, a hand clapper, a high fiver? If you want to hone in on those winning moves, check out Chumba Casino. Choose from hundreds of social casino style games for your chance to redeem serious cash prizes. There are new game releases weekly, plus free daily bonuses. So don't wait. Start having the most fun ever at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Every idea starts with a problem. Warby Parker's was simple. Glasses are too expensive. So they set out to change that. By designing glasses in-house and selling directly to customers, they're able to offer prescription eyewear that's expertly crafted and unexpectedly affordable. Warby Parker glasses are made from premium materials like impact-resistant polycarbonate and custom acetate. And they start at just $95, including prescription lenses. Get glasses made from the good stuff. Stop by a Warby Parker store near you.
Well, hello, everyone. If you don't know who I am, my name is Gabrielle Crichlow. I am the owner and director of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. So if you're not already familiar with this web series, this is the series where we talk real talk about things in education, employment, mental health, physical health, finance, anything else that is steamy. So today is a special episode because we are live streaming this. We are live streaming this on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, and we're even giving Twitter a shot. So I'm looking to see how that turns out. And this is a special one because we are gearing up for our virtual event, Homeschooling 101. So let me just put up my little banner here. All right, so all of this is in preparation for our Homeschooling 101 event happening tonight. So if you happen to be watching this in real time on December 16th, our workshop is happening tonight at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you are watching this episode on the replay, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel and find the replay to the panel there. And it will also be on Facebook as well. And it might even be on Twitter. We'll see how that goes. So again, if you're watching this episode in real time, please sign up on the link below. It is streaming below. Sign up to attend the event. I'm trying to find my words today. And if you are watching this episode on the replay, I encourage you to go to our YouTube channel, go to our Facebook page, and find the replay of the homeschooling event there. So today, our topic is going to be about, well, before I get into the topic, so this whole week we've been doing a homeschooling theme. So which brings me to my topic today, which is homeschooling a child with special needs. So by special needs, just so you have a reference, so by special needs, we are referring to children with learning disabilities, physical disabilities, developmental disabilities. So, excuse me. So when you hear the phrase special needs, that's what we are referring to. So children who have, again, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, learning disabilities, cognitive disabilities. So that's what we are referring to. And that is a big part of it's a very common thing in the homeschooling arena with children with special needs. And so this episode is about, how to address that, given that you're not going through traditional public schooling. So with that said, my guest today is going to help me navigate that world. And her name is Dr. Rochelle Matthews-Somerville. She got a Ph.D., y'all. And she is going to help me out with this discussion. And I am totally looking forward to this. So I'm just going to get right into it. So, who is Dr. Rochelle Matthews-Somerville? I'm going to tell you who she is. Okay. Excuse me. Dr. Rochelle Matthews-Somerville is a homeschooling mom of 6 with over 20 years of experience as a university professor, autism specialist, research teacher, and educational consultant in both the private and public industry, supporting individuals and their families with unique learning and behavioral challenges. Currently, she applies her passions for teaching and serving in her roles as team leader of the Special Need Educational Consultants at HSLDA and president of EFM Educational Consultants. Dr. Matthews-Somerville has most enjoyed sharing her gifts with the homeschool community over the past 13 years, as she has served as program director, community instructor, and assessment liaison. She generally enjoys providing encouragement and support to other homeschooling families, especially those educating learners with unique needs in all ways possible. All right, so with that said, I'm going to bring Dr. Matthews-Somerville to the stage right now. Hi, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much, Gabrielle, for having me. I'm excited to be here just to share information and, talk about what I love to do.
Awesome, and I look forward to chatting with you on that. So let's get right into it. So can you talk about, I know I kind of defined special needs, in the introduction, but if using your experience and your knowledge, can you define what is meant by special needs?
Sure. Well, of course, every child has a special need. Even children that are not diagnosed with any specific disability has some type of special need. But for all practical purposes, when we're talking about children with special needs, we're typically talking about those that have been diagnosed with some type of learning deficiency, but you also have the other end of the spectrum, and it's the other end of the spectrum that sometimes we forget about, because a lot of times students with gifts also fall under that category of special needs, because a lot of students with disabilities also are twice exceptional, and so they come with a lot of gifts. When we think of, like, for example, autism, you have Asperger's syndrome, and a lot of those students have some quirky things that are about them, and they may have some deficiencies socially, but they also have really, a lot of them have gifts intellectually. And so you may have some twice exceptional students there that have gifts and learning disabilities, or, you may have students with some high anxieties to the point where there is considered a disability, whereas at the same time they may have gifts in some other areas. And so when we talk about disabilities, we're not only talking about those traditionally that have some deficiency cognitively. You may also have students with impairments physically, emotionally, and so the whole gamut of some type of impairment that students typically have. But again, you have to remember those at the other end of the spectrum that have gifts that also require special attention. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about special needs.
Thank you so much for that. So a very common issue is, particularly in the homeschooling community, is that how do they find access to resources? How do they find access to resources for their child with special needs? So I know in the traditional schooling, it's already kind of built into it. The school counselor, you send your child to the school counselor and or the school psychologist, and they assess the child, or they not outsource. They refer them out to outside sources. So as a homeschooling parent who doesn't have access to those traditional means, how can they assess those same resources for their children?
So this is always a tough one when parents with special needs, when children with special needs choose to homeschool. It is a tough one, and it does take work. And so it definitely has to be an intentional decision when you choose to homeschool a child with special needs. However, the first thing you need to realize is in a lot of states and a lot of counties and districts, parents can choose to maintain their services through their IEPs. However, it's not necessarily only the option of the parent, and so it's a team decision. Parents have to make the request to school systems, and depending on the team decision of whether the student needs it or not, some school systems and some counties will allow the school to continue serving the student with the services that they are receiving. Now there are some pros and cons to that. The pros are definitely that there's continuity in the service that the child is receiving. And so when parents are coming from an IEP, I always recommend that the parent kind of weigh whether they feel like the services they were receiving for their child were actually quality services. That's the first thing coming out. If they feel good about the services, then I say that it is worth it to kind of request that those services continue. But in my experience, a lot of parents feel like it either wasn't enough or the services were not quality services, and that may be one of the reasons why they are considering homeschooling or they have chosen to homeschool their child. And so if you're feeling like the services were not quality services or you think your child could benefit from more, then I would say cut ties and seek private services. Now, how do you do that? It's not always easy. In some places it's a little easier than others. The first
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Line would always be, especially for younger children, depending on your insurance, would be to go through your pediatrician. And a lot of times, insurance will cover the costs if you go through your insurance and get a referral. Now, this is insurance specific, and so it depends really on your insurance, whether you have the type of insurance that makes you go out for a referral or not. But a lot of times for homeschoolers, the first thing I recommend is, spend some time finding your community, because word of mouth goes really, really far. And if you are one of those people that are connected to like a Facebook group, some people are like, nope, I can't do technology. I don't want to do those communities. Facebook has created amazing communities when it comes to different groups for individuals and families who are trying to connect when it comes to disabilities and homeschoolers. For example, I actually live in Maryland, and in my particular county, there is a Southern Maryland group for students for families with kids with autism. And so, when you join that group, it's a really good community to find resources. Parents though out there, I'm looking for a psychiatrist, in this area, because a lot of times when you don't have that, you don't know who's in your area. And so it's a really good platform to start off with, to find professionals in your area, to start that resource bank. And as people have good experiences as well as bad experience, they start to share that information with each other. And it's really powerful, the way that parents really support each other, because the agendas are all the same, to serve their kids with the best resources. And so that's one starting place. Another is if you live in a community where there is a university, a lot of times those universities have, if they have a psychology or a psychiatry department, and you're looking, for example, let's say you want your child tested for, annually, or you suspect your child has some type of other issue or disability, compounding their progress at home or something like that, and you're looking for another type of doctor or maybe a speech pathologist, and there is a school, like a school of speech pathologists at your local university. A lot of time they have clinicians that have to get so many clinical hours to actually receive their degree, and so they're working under a licensed clinician. And a lot of universities are taking clients in order to get those students trained. And so you can a lot of times use those programs to get resources for your child, and they're usually really, really good because, of course, remember, it's not just the students that are training. They're working under professionals that you would normally see in their private practices too. So that's a really good way to find resources in the community. Another one is there are a couple of just online platforms like Psychology Today that you could tap into, psychologytoday.com. Where you would put in your zip code to find local professionals in your area. So if you were looking for a vision specialist or a psychologist or a speech language pathologist, you put in your zip code and you'd say, okay, I want somebody 5 miles away, and you would find a professional in your area. So there are lots and lots of ways to find resources in your area, but sometimes what it takes to find those resources is connecting with the community to start helping to share how to make those connections. And so making those initial connections isn't always easy, and until you make those connections with other people who can share the information with you. So I really, really recommend that if you are really starting out homeschooling a student or a child with special needs, that you find your community to kind of help with finding those resources, because finding the resources is not easy, but they are out there and it is completely doable. So I just encourage you to find your community.
Thank you so much for that. And before I continue, I just want to remind you guys that this is an interactive episode. So if you are watching this in real time, please leave your questions and comments in the chat. Any particular questions, we will do our best to answer them. So again, this is an interactive episode and I encourage you to participate. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. Now, you, Dr. Somerville, you mentioned earlier about IEPs, which is short for Individualized Education Plan. So do those plans apply to homeschool children, or is it just for the traditional, those that are being educated traditionally? So can a child who is being homeschooled get an IEP?
So as I mentioned before, if it depends on where you're living and whether the county or the district that you're in will allow you as a homeschooler to maintain your services through your IEP. So you can request that through your meeting, as you would through your, at the end of the year or wherever you want to pull your team together when you're deciding to pull your child or declare to homeschool. When you fill out your paperwork or prior to, you can request that you continue. If you choose to continue your services, you can maintain your IEP. There is something that's equivalent to an IEP, which is an SEP, Student Education Plan, that homeschoolers use. It is not required at all, but it is helpful, a lot of families have found, because what it is basically parallel to an IEP. And it's helpful because what an IEP does is it basically is an accountability piece, right? And so when you bring your child home, you
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Are the accountability piece, right? But it's not as easy as it sounds, or maybe it doesn't sound, when you bring your child home, because what happens is that you are now the administrator of your child's curriculum, your homeschool, your program, whatever you do is now in your hands. And so for a lot of students that were on IEPs, or a lot of students that have atypical patterns of learning, what tends to happen is you know that you're not going to see the rate of learning that you would if you had the typically developing child. So for example, what we expect to see is a year's growth in a year's amount of time. So the second grader is going to be ready for third grade at the end of the year. That's not necessarily true for the child with special needs. And so what the IEP does is the IEP prioritizes. What are the priorities for this particular school year? So when you create an SEP, which is equivalent to the IEP, you create those priorities, and it allows you to actually focus on certain skills, okay? And so when you focus on certain skills, then it gives you a focus, and it allows you as the parent to feel less chaotic. Because if you try to tackle everything that's in that grade level, it's not going to work. Because of course, they have an IEP for a reason. They have an IEP because they need focused skills. They can't accomplish everything that is thrown at them. They need to be more focused in their learning. And so it creates an accountability piece. The other thing it does too is that if you have older students, similar to an IEP, the SEP will also have a section where you have accommodations. Like, what accommodations do you provide for your child? When your child is learning in a regular situation, do you give them more time? Do you tend to repeat instructions? Do you give them preferential seating? Are they closer to you? Is there situations where you decrease the surround and the distractions around them? All of those things think about that you naturally do, because as they get older, and let's project a little bit further, when they're in middle school, upper middle school, transitioning to high school, maybe, let's say you have a high school or 10th grader, and now you're ready for them to take the PSAT or the SAT. Okay, well, we need some accommodations, right? Well, those accommodations, that SEP, and those accommodations that you wrote on that SEP will be validated when you go to request those accommodations from the College Board. The same way that the 504 plan or the IEP accommodations would be turned in to request accommodations in a public school situation, you can use your SEP as documentation for accommodations. Also, as you are matriculating through elementary school, when you have those accommodations documented, and let's say at the end of the year, if your state requires you to do end of the year testing, there are a lot of standardized tests that if you have accommodations documented, you are allowed to use those accommodations when you provide end of the year testing for your child. And so there is value in creating an SEP at home for your child, even though, again, it is not required at all. It simply provides accountability piece. It helps you a little bit. And not only that, when you have to turn in documentation, that accountability piece is really helpful, because when you turn in documentation, nobody will look at you and say, well, I don't understand why this student is not making progress. And you can say, well, wait a minute, here's the child's SEP. This is what we were working on this year. These were the goals, and look how far we've gotten. And so it makes you feel a little bit better too, because if you have focused goals, as opposed to saying, well, we're going to get through everything that all second graders do, it will make you feel very accomplished as you can check off the boxes for what you're accomplishing.
So I'd like to learn more about this SEP. So how does a parent get one? Where does one start?
So there is actually so in SEP there's a form. So at HSLDA, we actually have a template for it. It's a very generic template, and so you may be able to just Google. It really honestly looks like the template of an IEP. So IEPs generally are generic. It has the same type of information on it. At the very top, it has your information about, your background information, your name, your parents' name, your birthday. It has just your background information, and then it jumps to any background information you want to provide, and then it goes to your goals and objectives. The SEP is very, very similar. The template is just a template. And so you probably could Google one. Like I said, HSLDA has one that they do provide their members. And so if you're a member of HSLDA or would love to be a member of HSLDA, we could provide you with one. But like I said, it is a generic template that you could obtain. There's no specific form. Homeschooling is so completely flexible. As the administrator of your homeschool, you can create just about anything, similar to, an SEP. You can do the same with a transcript. There are lots of transcript templates out there. If you Google if you Google transcript, you'll find, 50 different template transcripts out there, and no one is any better than the other, but what you'll notice about them is they have similar information on them. And so it's kind of similar situation with the SEP. You could create one yourself. If you look at your IEP, you can create one that mimics an IEP. So there's no branded template that is correct or not, because again, you have become the administrator of your own homeschool, and so therefore whatever you create is kind of yours, but it is your documentation.
Awesome. So in a lot of states, it appears that homeschooling can start as young as 6. So I know in traditional schooling, there's what's called early intervention programs for, I think, 0 to 3 years old. So I'm wondering if there's anything like that in the homeschooling arena, or is it more, whatever the families want to do?
Lots of families, of course, especially bigger families, start working with their kids when they are very, very young, especially if they have older siblings. So when you start just a homeschool schedule, you kind of just include everybody because it makes sense. But in terms of the legal ramifications, homeschooling starts when students are legally required to be homeschooled. And so that's when you need to turn in those forms to, that intent to homeschool, when they are legally required to homeschool. So before then, parents are free to do whatever they want. They can start when they want, but in terms of when they need to start homeschooling on the books, that becomes a situation when their particular state requires them to start homeschooling. And there are exceptions, but those again would be state specific in terms of what your state requires. Like, for example, some states would say you must be 5 years old by October 1st, but if your birthday is October 15th, then you can take this test and if you pass this test, then all of a sudden you can start kindergarten at this age. And so whatever the rules are in your state is what you would have to follow. But if you have a younger child that you would like to start doing some type of schooling with, then you are more than happy and you're more than eligible to do that. But in terms of being on paper to homeschool, I believe that happens when your state requires it.
Okay, got you. All right, so going back to accommodation. So, going back to accommodations. So on the is it the student education plan?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay, so the SEP is more, the parents create it as, not. So I guess let me clarify that. So the SEP, is that something the parents make, or is that done by a medical professional?
No, the student education plan is something that the parents completely create. So this is not a team effort, it's nothing. It is what the parent documents and creates. So the goals are prioritized by the parent. They are more than happy to get, and I would recommend that the parent get input. For example, if the child is receiving speech therapy, then by all means, I would get the input of your speech therapist, because your speech therapist could have input on reading and language goals that would be most appropriate. And not only that, I would also have a section at the bottom for, the amount of services that the child is receiving, because when there's some states that require certain hours of instruction. So if your state requires, 270 hours of instruction, in a school year, or in however long, then you start adding up those hours. There's some states that may require, 1,000 hours, and parents are like, well, how in the world am I going to get 1,000 hours? That's a lot. Yes, but you also have to remember that all of those ancillary services, if you get speech, if you get OT, if you get PT, all of that adds up. And so when you put those goals on there, that's part of the instruction too. And so sometimes we have to kind of think outside of the box, because learning doesn't just happen from 9 to 3. And so sometimes it requires thinking outside the box, because I tell people all the time, it's really, really difficult to not learn. But sometimes we have to kind of unschool ourselves to kind of think outside the box in terms of how we document what we do, especially when it comes time for students with special needs, because a lot of times they don't have those, they don't have the ability to sit at a table and work, and sometimes they don't even have the skill levels to be able to produce the amount of work that would allow them to sit at a table for hours on end, or 3 or 4 or 5 hours to sit at to produce the amount of work that would take that along at a table. And so, it helps to get the input of your service providers, but the priorities and the writing of the SEP are up to the parent.
All right, awesome. So now that that's clarified, so going back to accommodations, so trying to think of an example. So for someone with for a child with dyslexia, I think there's there's a little gadget that helps them read the letters, I think. So little tools like that, is that provided for students who are homeschooled?
So there is a lot of funding, and I say this gently because it's not easy to find. So there's a lot of funding that is available to homeschoolers. Now this is like the best kept secret. It's almost like, I don't know if you've ever heard that there is so much untapped money out there for college students. And the reason it's untapped is because no one can find it. I mean, finding the money is a full-time job. So it's a similar situation when it comes to finding the resources almost for students, just students in general who are homeschooled, especially those with disabilities. There are different organizations that provide lots and lots of resources to students with disabilities, but you just have to find the community who can actually point you in the right direction. So these resources are not going to come from your public school system. And this, unfortunately, is a lot of times for students who transition from the public school system, this is who we're used to depending on. So we have our communication system from the public school system. We have our accommodation system, the writing pen or things like that from the public school system if you're transitioning from the public school system. And so we're used to depending on them, but when you become a homeschooler, all of that is taken away. And so you then have to reach out to other organizations. And so there are other organizations, and a lot of times they are specific to the disability. So there is the IDA, which is the organization, the International Disability Association, which is the organization that's the founding organization for dyslexia. that will point you to resources for dyslexia. You go there and you can find all kinds of, not necessarily you won't find the dyslexia resources, but they will most likely they will point you to the places where you need to look. And so that's a good place to start. You know, if your child has autism, you go to the Autism Society of America, you hit that website and it'll point you to all different kind of places. It's a good place to start. And so there are also smaller organizations that have resources that you can tap into. There's lots and lots of funding agencies that fund. The challenge is that they're funding at different periods throughout the year, and you never know when their funding period starts because it's at different times of the year. But again, for those that are HSLDA members, we always have a list of organizations, and although we don't necessarily know the start and stop dates of these organizations, it's really helpful to kind of put them in your toolkit so that you have the name of them, and just as you get the opportunity, you can kind of make a list of them and call them and find out when these organizations will open their funding. And so a lot of times, this funding will take care of a lot of times curriculum. It'll take care of some of the devices. Sometimes, if you go to your pediatrician.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Your pediatrician. For example, if your child had a communication device, a lot of these devices are provided by the federal government, but it is a third-party kind of system, and so your pediatrician will have the contact for the organization that you then have to contact to submit your insurance to, then we'll provide it to you for free. So it's a lot of legwork. But if it's something your child needs, it's worth the legwork. But it's almost like you have to start to build your community because it's your community and word of mouth that will start to point you to the resources. And so I can't encourage you enough, if you have a child with special needs, to understand the value of building your community who is going to point you to the resources, because it is not like the public school system where the resources are going to come to you when your team convenes, because that was the role of your team. Your community came to you and you were plopped into that community where the resources came to you. So this is kind of different, where you have to build your community, and that community that you build is then going to point you in which direction you need to go. But then after you find it, you still have to go and seek it. And so there are lots of resources, you know, if it's a communication device you need, or if it's a device you may need to seek just funding, and the funding will specify that it needs to be used for an educational purpose. But there's definitely funding available. You just have to tap into it.
So just to sum up what you said, so for parents who are homeschooling to access those resources, whether it's the accommodations or just looking for a speech therapist or OT, or any kind of specialist, they would have to seek those things privately. So whether paying out of pocket or getting financial assistance or using their health insurance, it is possible to assess those same resources. It's just a matter of doing research and taking care of it privately. Is that the gist of it?
Yes, absolutely.
All righty. So I'm glad you brought up colleges. Can you talk about the disability services? Can a homeschool child who decides to go to college, can they access those disability services?
Yes, absolutely they can. And you know, the interesting thing is that disability services at a college or university is almost easier to obtain than it is prior to college. Why? Because it's almost that same system as you had when you were in that traditional public school system. And when I say that, I'm saying this from the perspective that it's a localized office. So it's a federal program. And so when you go to the university or college, you find that disability office, okay? And when you find that office, it's almost like they're waiting for you, and they just need you to let them know what you need, and then you're assigned a person who will then help you to navigate what you need, which accommodations. You provide them with the documentation, and then they will kind of walk you through the steps. So your job as a parent, if you have an older student, is prior to the time of them leaving high school, if they are college bound, is to help them to advocate for themselves. Because now the challenge when you get to the college level is that they now are seen as adults. And so they need to advocate for themselves at the college level. So when they reach the disability office, yes, they are your baby forever, but they are now an adult. And so that is the hardest piece for students with disabilities once they reach the college and university level, is that they have been so used to people taking care of them. Advocating for themselves is a little bit tough. When they get to that disability office, they need to be able to communicate what they need, because the disability officer does not want to talk to their mother. They do not want to talk to their father, their aunt, their cousin. They need the person one-on-one to let them know, what do you need? When you go into class, what do you need to help you maximize your ability to learn? Will it help you if you have a scribe? Will it help you if the teacher gives you his or her notes? What do you need to learn? And that student needs to be able to communicate, because if the student says, oh no, I'm fine, I think it's good, I think I'll be fine, no, I don't need anything, then they won't get anything. And so the student needs to be able to advocate for themselves once they reach that college campus, because they have their support team there, but they do need to ask for it. They're not going to have anybody there pushing them to take the services, even if they're eligible for them. There's nobody there to force them. Nobody's going to say to their teacher, this student right here has a disability and they need you to give them their notes. But they're eligible for anything they need. And so your job through high school and even middle school is to help them to advocate and communicate what they actually need. And so kind of pull back a little bit and let them, sit in the driver's seat in terms of communicating to you. And sometimes it's a process of just having them tell you what they need, or, you sitting move over to that passenger seat and put them in the driver's seat a little bit, and just, it is a transition. It's a transition. And so, but it's something that needs to be strategically done. But the encouraging news is that they are very accessible on a college campus, and it's not going to be a fight. So if you have a student who is going to need accommodations on a college campus, do not fear that. There are tons of supports on a college campus for students that have disabilities.
So would the SEP apply to this situation? In terms, could it be used for colleges? So for colleges, they will not need an SEP because they can get any accommodation that they need. So the SEP basically has goals on it, modified goals. So they will not need the goals, because if they are college bound and they're taking college courses, they have to be able to
access the course. So if they're taking an English 101 course, for example, what we're saying is that they are able to take that English 101 course with accommodations. So they're eligible for accommodations. So if they need, they can ask for more time, they can ask for teacher notes, they can ask for, preferential seating, they can ask for any accommodations that's appropriate for their disability. However, they still need to be able to access the course. So you couldn't come in and say, well, my student can't really do what you're asking them to do, so can they do 50% of the work? So those are not appropriate accommodations. Those would be adaptations. So it's not appropriate to ask for adaptations. There's a difference between adaptations and accommodations. So adaptations would be modifying the course content, and accommodations is basically evening the playing field so they can access the course the same way that everybody else does. And so on a college campus, you basically are able to ask for any accommodation that evens the playing field, that allows the student to achieve what they need to in order to be successful.
Fabulous, fabulous. And what about SETS program? So I think it's special education. I forgot what the TSS means, but I don't know if you're familiar with SETS. Might be a New York City thing, but SETS programs. I forgot what the acronym stands for, but basically they can have for like traditional schooling, they can have tutors sent to their homes. Who have those credentials. So I'm wondering if homeschooled children have access to that as well.
So are you referring to elementary, or just you're not talking about the college anymore? You're talking about just
Yeah, I'm away from colleges now. So now it's back to elementary, middle school, high school.
Sure. So some state laws will specify for you, you have options of homeschooling. And some of those options are that the parent will be the primary teacher, that a tutor, they call them a tutor, which is a certified teacher, will be the primary teacher, and other options are that they will attend some type of virtual school. So, and this is state specific, and so depending on what your options are to homeschool, then you may choose that option. Now, while I say that, I here in Maryland I am homeschooling my kids, and I can still have a tutor come in and teach my kids any content area that I choose, as long as I remain the primary person who is responsible for their home education program. So, for example, if I chose, like, for example, let me take my son, for example. My son, clearly, he is now a freshman. He is completing his first year as a freshman at UMBC.
How to have fun, anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
VGW Group. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And when he was in 10th grade, I could clearly see that he had gifts in math that stretched way beyond what I was able to do. And so around 10th grade, we started to outsource math when he hit calculus. When he hit pre-calculus. And so when in his senior year, he took AP Calculus, and he literally took it with somebody else. I could not teach AP Calculus. So all through his senior year, he took AP Calculus with somebody else. So, but I was still responsible for his homeschool program, even though he took AP Calculus with somebody else. And so you can still have somebody else teach a course. He was still under my administration for the rest of his program. And that is fine. We also do Classical Conversations, which is a nationwide homeschool program where we go into school once a week and the rest of the week I teach him at home. And so somebody else taught him once a week in all subject areas. And so it was a combination of having a tutor sometimes, and then for some subject areas like math, somebody else taught him. So that was allowable, even though my option is that I teach him all the subject areas, because while somebody was just teaching him one subject, that was still allowed. So you can still outsource some of your subject areas as long as somebody is not teaching everything, unless that is the option that you have chosen for your homeschool and you are in a state that allows that. So in some situations, yes.
Awesome. All right, so we're starting to wind down a little bit. So can you talk about why a lot of parents who have children with special needs, why they choose to homeschool as opposed to going through traditional schooling? Because I find that it seems to be a very common thing. So I'm wondering why you think parents with children who have special needs, why they choose to homeschool as opposed to going through traditional schooling.
I think there are two different ends of the spectrum here. There are a group of parents who are running, I believe, from a system who I think is failing their children. They're looking and they're feeling like the services they're getting through speech and OT and PT simply aren't enough, and the services that they're receiving aren't enough, and that their kids are not being they're not being pushed to their potential. And so I think that there are a lot of parents who are leaving and coming to homeschool because they feel like their students are just being failed in the public school system. But I also feel like that a lot of parents right now are looking at homeschooling as a viable option to actually bring out something very different in their child. I believe that they see what their child is capable of, And so, I tell people all the time, I think the pandemic was a mixed blessing, because while we all complained that we were stuck in this house for, it's going on 3 years now, we could barely remember what normal was. But I think what's happened is that parents had that time with their children, and they realized what gifts these kids are and what they're capable of, and the amount of progress that they were able to make and what they were able to do in a short amount of time. And I think sometimes is that when we are away from our kids for so long, we forget and we're just not aware of what our kids can do. And so I think for a lot of people, they are now aware of what their kids have the potential to do, and I think they're running towards that. I think they're running to push their kids, and I think they want to maximize and they want to capitalize on the gifts that their kids have, whether they have a label or disability or whatever they are, whatever label they carry. I tell people all the time, a label or disability is something you have. It is not who you are. If you have autism, then that's something you have. It's like a piece of clothing, regardless of whether you have autism or dyslexia. Okay, fine. Now, what are we going to do with it? When it's cold outside, you put on a coat, you make accommodations and you work through it. You figure out what needs to be done in order to still, make the best of the situation. And so that's basically what it's like. And I think parents have figured that out, that disability or that
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
That gap or that weakness doesn't have to be the thing that slows them down or stops them. And what does halt progress of students with disability is low expectations. So when they are caught in a system where they are not pushed or the expectations are low, you cannot get out of that. And so I think what's happening is that parents are running to other options, and homeschooling is a viable option. It's an educational option. It's a way to raise expectations and actually challenge students to see what they can potentially be, or where we can take them. And so I commend parents who have stepped up for the challenge, because a lot of times parents didn't feel equipped. But these 2 years of being in the house have shown parents that they can do it. Is it easy? Absolutely not. But it's not easy to homeschool typically developing children. It's not easy. It's not easy to parent, but we do it. We get up and we do it every morning. And so I encourage parents all the time. They are absolutely equipped to homeschool their children with special needs. It's not going to be easy. Finding resources is not easy. Finding services is not easy, but it's absolutely doable. You just have to find your community who will help you to build your resource bank. And once you have everything in place, it's not going to be easy, but it's absolutely doable. And so, again, I think this pandemic has been an absolutely, it's been a blessing for many families who now are able to see another side of who their kids are and what the potential can be of who their kids can become. And so I think it's been a beautiful thing.
Fabulous, fabulous. All right, so we are coming to the end here. Do you have any final advice for the people watching? Any final words of wisdom that you want to share?
If, again, my biggest advice I could give people would be what I just said, would be to find your community. Homeschooling is not easy. I have been homeschooling for almost 15 years, and every year is different. I can't say that it has become easier. It has been different. We are in a rhythm right now, which is nice. I love homeschooling, but I have 6 very different learners, and people say all the time, well, this should be easy for you. And I'm going to say no, because I'm not using the same curriculums. I'm not doing the same thing over, because I have 6 different learners, varying from the gifted learner to the kid with, who's very disorganized, ADHD, that I have to pull out all the tricks and hats for. But I love every bit of homeschooling and planning, and God keeps me on my toes, and I love every single bit of it. I have used my community, I have used my resources, and I have been put on a path where I love to serve, and so this is what puts me in this position. And so I encourage everybody to continue to do what you're doing. You're doing a fabulous job. If you have chosen to homeschool, then you have been chosen, and I just suggest that you find your community and figure out what you need to do to make it work, because homeschooling is absolutely possible for everybody. It's not just for some, but it is for everybody if that's what you want. And the only people that will benefit from homeschooling are your children.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you, Dr. Somerville, for joining me today on this discussion. So let me put up your little banner here. All right, so Dr. Somerville is part of the HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, and she is also a member of EFM Education. Can you talk about that latter one?
Absolutely. So EFM Educational Consultants is actually my own consultant organization, and founded it quite a few years ago with my mother. My mother, Eileen Matthews, she has always had a heart for, just like me, for, mentoring the community. She retired from Gallaudet University, and so she's always been in the field of special education too. And so we just had a heart for mentoring and sharing information with the community. And so we decided that the best way to touch people and touch lives was to share our breadth of knowledge and, just love for supporting and supporting the community through creating an organization that just shared a wealth of information through resources and things. by creating our own organization. And so we did. So I encourage you, visit www.efmeducation.com. And I also work for HSLDA, which is another homeschool organization, which for almost 40 years has been helping homeschooling possible for millions of families. We currently have over 100,000 members. And if you haven't heard about HSLDA, which I mentioned a couple times, we are the largest we're the largest homeschool organization, advocacy organization for homeschoolers. And basically our mission is just to protect the freedoms of homeschoolers, protect the rights of homeschoolers in court, advocate for homeschooling freedoms in each state. And we fight for state legislation to advance homeschooling in the public arena. We also have educational consultants who are there to offer personalized guidance and answer all the questions about homeschooling, including getting started, learning disabilities, high school. We have consultants at the pre-K through 8, special needs, and high school level. And of course, the biggest piece that I continue to talk about is just we are there actually to build our efforts in building a community to make sure that homeschooling remains possible for everybody.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for that. And on that note, with HSLDA, I'm going to play a little video that outlines what they're about.
Morning, sunshine.
Made you something.
It's empty. It's empty for now. The root systems hold all the dirt in place, so the soil doesn't...
Mom? What are you doing? What is this?
We're learning about ecosystems, and this is a forest.
What are all these other doors?
Go find out. What are you waiting for?
Hi! There's a good hold up to your left.
Is that Mom?
You want to go next? Don't worry, I'm holding the rope down on this end so Mom's not going to fall. It's a basic pulley system where the weight and the distance are directly proportional.
Yeah, that sounds really, really cool, but I got a lot more things I want to see.
Just a little higher. Got this.
Pretty beautiful, huh?
Are you looking at constellations?
Even cooler. They're called nebulas. You want to see?
Wow.
What do you think?
I love it.
So when we're done here, where do you want to go next?
And there we go. So definitely check out the HSLDA. They have a wealth of resources for you to check out. And I even encourage you to join the HSLDA as well to get access to a variety of resources and even those forms that Dr. Somerville was talking about. All right, so Dr. Somerville, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoy the conversation, and I really do enjoy us spreading information and helping to let people know that they can homeschool. It's possible.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so thank you, and I'm going to place you backstage now. And you guys, it is just you and me. So I'm going to put up my little banner here. Okay. And that concludes our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please check out if you're watching this on YouTube, please check out our other videos and clips, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. If you're watching this on Facebook, please give us a like, and also head on over to our YouTube channel and give us a subscribe as well. And if you just so happen to be watching this on Twitter, please follow us on Twitter, then head on over to Facebook, give us that like, and then head on over to YouTube and give us that subscribe. Also, for our YouTubers and our Facebookers, let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below. And if you would like to learn more about A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, you can find us on our various platforms, which is scrolling right below, and some that I mentioned to you just now. And we are also online. Our website is www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. So normally at this point, I would talk about my crowdfunding campaign, but because HSLDA is a nonprofit, I'm going to encourage you to head on over there. Their website is hslda.org and make a donation today. You can donate your money or your time. Just donate. Please support that organization. So that is it for our episode today. If you so happen to be watching this in real time, I encourage you to check out our Homeschooling 101 virtual panel. It is going to be playing on our YouTube channel and our Facebook Live. At this point, signing up has probably been cut off at this point, but you could still go to our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. And if you are watching the replay, please check out the replays as well on those two mediums that I just mentioned. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I will see you next time, whenever that is. Thank you.
Hey, it's Ryan Seacrest. Life comes at you fast, which is why it's important to find some time to relax. A little you time. Enter Chumba Casino. With no download required, you can jump on anytime, anywhere for the chance to redeem some serious prizes. So treat yourself with Chumba Casino and play over 100 online casino-style games, all for free. Go to ChumbaCasino.com to collect your free welcome bonus. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.